John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to this special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to look at all things Hour of Devastation Singles. We'll see which cards are hot right now, going up in value, and we'll look at which cards are cold right now, and going down in value. Now, this is the second full week of the new standard meta. Last week, we saw the Star City Games Open happen, and it was the first time we got to see some of these Hour of Devastation cards in action. Now, this previous weekend, we saw a couple different events. There was a Team Open, and there was also a Star City Games Classic, which is a much smaller tournament. So we did see some different decks rise to prominence over this weekend. It could be an evolution of the metagame, but you do have to take into account sometimes the smaller tournaments or things like a team tournament could have different metas than your typical large tournament standard like you'd find at a Grand Prix or something like that. So do keep that in mind as we go through these values. Also remember, we're in for a roller coaster ride over the next few weeks as we approach closer to the Pro Tour. Of course, there'll be Pro Tour spiking over the course of that weekend, depending on what cards are featured and what decks do well. Then after that, you'll see some price stabilization. So a lot's going to change from what we see today, but this could be a good chance to swoop in there and pick up some cards at a very reasonable price before things start to get a little bit crazy. Quickly before we get started though, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to support us, one of which is our Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases there, whether it's the singles you see here today or anything else, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. Secondly, you'll also find our Patreon page listed below as well. With that out of the way, let's get into the cards. And we'll begin with the top 10 cards that have lost value this week from Hour of Devastation. Coming in at number 10, Bantu's Last Reckoning, down 30 cents this week to $4. Now, Bantu's Last Reckoning has seen standard play. I think we'll continue to see standard play, but it is competing against a lot of really good board sweeps out there. Namely, Hour of Devastation is starting to emerge as maybe the best one, and I feel like that particular board sweep, even though it costs 5, this one technically costs 3, taking into account you can't untap next turn, this one minimally is actually going to cost 6. It's just paid over the course of 2 turns. Some decks might just rather have the pay 5 all at once Hour of Devastation. Also, another advantage to Hour is the fact that it can also impact most Planeswalkers, and we've seen from the first couple weeks that could be important going forward in the meta. On top of that, this is also competing with things like Fumigate, Sweltering Suns, Radiant Flames. There's just a lot of ways you can go when it comes to sweeping the board. I don't think this will go away, but its role is probably going to be lessened a little bit. Coming in number 9, Ronus' Last Stand, down 35 cents to $1.10. This is a good card with good power behind it that came out at the absolute wrong time. Like, there's just so much going against this card. First off, you have things like Fatal Push out there. You have Unsummon out there. You have cards like Dust to Dawn, which work well with small creatures, but don't work well with a card that creates a creature token necessarily. So there's all of these other options out there that you're going to choose over this one just because of what's happening. Not to mention the edict effects. I mean, you got a 2 casting cost edict, you got a 3 casting cost edict. There's just so many ways for this card to be taken out quickly. It's just kind of scary. So unfortunately, good card, but I don't think it's going to get off the ground. Coming in at number 8, Ramanap Excavator, down 36 cents to $5.95. This one's actually kind of interesting because it hasn't made a big splash in Standard yet or anything like that. However, it is seeing play, believe it or not, in Vintage, Legacy, and Modern already. There are some players that are thinking that they rather have a Crucible of Worlds that can put some feet on the ground and apply some pressure to their opponents or to Planeswalkers as opposed to the actual Crucible, or use this in conjunction with Crucible. So that's actually pretty interesting and could say a lot for the future role of this card going forward long term. Also, this is a nice pickup for anyone looking for a budget version of Crucible, considering this is going to cost you about $60 less than Crucible of Worlds, which is nice. And that's especially good maybe if you're a casual player, you play Commander, and you don't want to spend $65 on that particular card. Here's a nice option that's very similar. Also, it could be a redundancy for some players that want a second option in Commander. So with all that on the table, I think this card has a bright future, just going down a little bit this week. Number 7 is Majestic Matriarch. This is down 40 cents this week to $2.25. This Mythic is a little soft right now, but it is a cool Commander card. It hasn't found a home in Standard quite yet, but I could see this going forward being a card that a lot of Commander players may want to pick up. If you can get one early for $1 or $2, I say why not do it. Number 6, Nimble Obstructionist, down 42 cents this week to $2.99. This card is seeing some standard play, a little bit in some main decks, but mostly out of sideboards in decks like the Azorius Monument decks, which are actually doing very well. So I think this has a place in standard. It might be a little awkward right now as we see more of the aggro red deck starting to emerge as stronger and stronger pieces of the meta. and this card maybe isn't great in those matchups, but where this card excels is in matchups where you're trying to put pressure on opponents' life totals, or maybe more importantly, planeswalkers. Because of that, I think in the current meta, this will stay a good sideboard card, but in future metas, especially post-rotation, this could play a bigger role in the future. So again, I like the power level in the card for Standard. It might not quite reach its full potential in this meta, but keep an eye on this one going forward. Number 5, Fraying Sanity, down 44 cents to $4.99. Well, that mill deck just couldn't seem to get off the ground, unfortunately. And Fraying Sanity is a really cool card. A lot of opponents are thinking about applications in Commander and casual decks, and there'll definitely always be a home for it there, no doubt. But at least for Standard purposes right now, it's not looking too good. Maybe even someday Modern. Someone could brew something that is efficient enough that could be interesting. The power level's there, but as of right now, the cards are already starting to slip. Coming in number 5 is Hollow One, down 45 cents to $1.41. I think this is a case of a card that was just simply overvalued coming out of the pre-release. And unfortunately, for this card to really do well, it has to have kind of a perfect storm hand. And this is not going to happen with any sort of consistency that you want in Standard, for example. And because of that, this card has slipped very fast and has fallen really, really low. Now, also, you have to take into account, we live in a world full of Abrade now. Basically, Abrade is everywhere. So again, that's just another thing going against this card, keeping it down. Coming in at number 3 is the Scorpion God, down 45 cents to $5.10. And this is a card that hasn't quite grabbed a hold of Standard yet either. The other 2 gods are making their place in Standard, and we'll be talking about at least one of them later on the list. But this one hasn't quite gotten there yet. However, all 3 of them are fantastic in Commander. There's a lot of Commander decks out there now running these gods. And because of that, this one, even though it slipped a little bit this week, I think we'll do a pretty decent job at holding on to its value, at least for the short term. And then maybe at some point somebody finds something useful to do with it in Standard, and it could go up even higher. So again, if you can find this for $4 or $5 right now, it's definitely a decent pickup, especially for a Commander player. Number 2, Uncage the Menagerie, down 49 cents to $2.30. I was never a big fan of this card. It seems fine, but we've seen so many other versions of the card that are better than this one in the past. Now, maybe post-rotation, there's a deck that might want to run something like this in the future. Right now, I think there's just too many other cards to choose from in Standard. And of course, it doesn't line up real well with cards that were already printed when you start looking at other formats, whether that be Commander or Modern or Legacy or what have you. So, unfortunately, I think this one will continue to slip. And coming at number 1, Nissa Genesis Mage, down 71 cents to $5.17. Of course, this is the Planeswalker deck, Nissa. You can only get it if you buy the Planeswalker deck with her on the front. Now, some players will pick this up for casual play, for Commander play, and it can be a decent card there. It's not something that's going to cross over necessarily into Standard or anything, but there's this weird sort of juxtaposition of pricing with a card like this, because yes, you can go to your Walmart or your Target and simply pick it up. There's a lot of copies of this thing out there. It's not very hard to find. However, some players just don't want to pick up the whole deck. They might rather have the single. So if they're buying other singles, maybe trying to build a Standard deck, and they decide, you know what, let me throw this Nissa in my cart too for Commander purposes, then that kind of negates the shipping costs and almost makes it worthwhile. So you're going to see a little bit of that early on from Planeswalker deck Planeswalkers, but ultimately they all eventually kind of fall. Once the players that have them for their casual decks or Commander decks get them, and everyone kind of sees, well, the product is pretty much everywhere, it becomes hard to justify a very high price tag on these things. Now, the other thing that's awkward is sometimes sellers don't want to break a whole bunch of these Planeswalker decks to sell off the singles, because basically they're only going to be able to sell this single out of that particular deck. That can be awkward for them too, which sometimes leads to a dryness in the secondary market, and sometimes leads to kind of an inflated price, even though it's a very easy to find card, again, at any big box store. So keep an eye on these things. They can do some weird stuff. All right, let's move on to the top 10 cards that have gained a value this week. Coming in at number 10, Hour of Promise, up 13 cents to $1.94. Especially in week 2, we started to see a rise in prominence of some of the Gruul ramp decks. This was a key part of it. I could also see this perhaps seeing some play in Modern someday in the future, but if not, still awesome Commander card on top of everything else. Coming in at number 9, Nicol Bolas God Pharaoh, up 16 cents to $21. And this card is seeing standard play, even with a high casting cost. It's showing up in some energy decks. It's showing up in some control decks, as you could imagine. Usually like a one of, maybe a one in the main, one in the sideboard sort of thing. But it is a good card when it hits the battlefield. You can't deny that. Your opponent's going to have to deal with it. As long as you can cast it, it's fantastic. So with the Pro Tour coming up, and this being one of the key marquee cards of the set, and having one of the key marquee characters of Magic on it, I have no doubt there's going to be a lot of attention on this card throughout the Pro Tour. I'm sure there'll be some vignettes about the character, maybe even about the card. Not to mention that when it does see play, or if it's indexed, there's going to be a lot of talk about it on camera. Because of that, I expect this card to see a spike coming out of the Pro Tour. But do remember, it is a Mythic. There's a lot of packs, though, being opened of this particular set right now. So you do have to take that into account. I could see this card maybe settling in around $18 to $22. Remember, it's a card that is maybe a one of or two of in certain decks. It's also good in Commander, though. There are Commander players and casual players that will cross over and want this card. And you'd want to take in the X factor that this is a Nicol Bolas card, because that will help its value just based off that alone. So having said that, don't overpay for the card, especially during the price spike. Wait for it to stabilize later, or if you can find a good deal now, maybe pick one up. Coming in at number 8 is Neheb the Eternal, up 23 cents to $4.17. And this card is not really finding a foothold currently in Standard. The red decks, which look really good, mind you, are more aggro, small creature based, that type of thing. They're not mid-range necessarily, or big red decks. And that's really where this card kind of wants to be. However, it's very popular right now, again, in Commander, and because of that, it is seeing a small price increase. I could see eventually the red decks might evolve during either this meta or a future meta into a mid-range or a big red deck. If that's the case, then this card definitely could see some standard play as well in the future. Coming in at number 7, Supreme Will, up 24 cents to $1.23. This one's an uncommon, but it is going up in value, so it does speak to the fact that it is seeing some decent play right now in the standard meta. As you can imagine, this is showing up in control decks. I gotta wonder, though, long term, after some players play with this for a few weeks, if they decide they rather just have a more reliable 3 mana cost hard counter in their deck as opposed to this. But at least for right now, they're going for the versatility of this card. Number 6, Earthshaker Kenra, up 25 cents to 98 cents. This is probably the best deal you're going to find on the list today, quite honestly. If you can pick these things up for under $1, I would just go ahead and grab a play set of them, because they're great cards. They're seeing standard play. They're in very successful decks right now, and this is only going to go up. This is a rare, and do keep in mind that it's in a set that, again, a lot of packs are going to be open, so don't expect this thing to necessarily go through the roof or anything. But I'm just saying, if you can get it for $1 or so, as opposed to maybe a few weeks down the road at $5, it's probably a pretty good pickup. Number 5, Nicol Bolas the Deceiver, up 31 cents to $7.85. So this is the Planeswalker deck, Nicol Bolas, and everything I said about Nissa kind of applies here. Now, he costs a little more right now than Nissa. There's a couple of reasons for that, one of which is he is a little bit of a better card, I think, so there's more casual Commander players looking to pick this up. Secondly, it's Nicol Bolas, so it's going to have an extra value attached to it just because of that. Number 4, the Locust God, up 58 cents to $8.79. So I mentioned about a week ago that I really felt like this card will find its place in Standard. Looks like it's starting to. And what I predicted seems to be happening a little bit. Is it control decks are starting to look at this card? And I kind of thought with a Braid running around rampant in the format that they may look for an alternate to Torrential Gearhulk, or at least something else to supplement Torrential Gearhulk. And this would be a great choice, and that does appear like some players are starting to think that way too. So this is a card that's doing well in Standard, coming out of week 2, and also is phenomenal right now in Commander. There are swarm decks showing up everywhere. Players are picking this up to make these swarm decks. There's some great combos that combo with this card and just make it insane. So yeah, ultimately this one's going to keep going up. Number 3 is a Braid, up 83 cents to $1.89. So I've been talking about a Braid quite a bit during this show, and yeah, it's showing up anywhere. Basically, if the deck's running red, expect to get a Braided at some point. Its versatility is phenomenal. It deals with Gearhulks very well. You could even argue in the future maybe a modern sideboard card, even though there's cards that do things better and cheaper, like say Ancient Grudge. But if you want some more versatility attached to your Ancient Grudge, maybe this simply replaces that card in some boards. I don't know. It's one to watch. It's definitely going to be a key staple in Standard for its entire time in the format. Number 2, Crested Sunmare up $1.37 to $5.91. Pretty nice jump for this card this week, and right now it's not really making a splash in Standard or anything like that. However, Commander, it is kind of a big deal there. There are Commander players trying to pick it up. Although this spike seems a little suspicious to me for just an early Commander pickup. So I kind of wonder if maybe there's some Brewers picking this card up, or maybe even perhaps some leaks from Pro Tour or potential decks that people are thinking about. So I want to keep an eye on this one over the next couple weeks. Coming in at number 1, maybe no surprise, Champion of Wits up $1.63 to $3.92. This card is a powerhouse, right? This thing has been showing up, first off in Emerge decks, and it's looked really good there, but also Star City Games Classic this past weekend, we saw a deck that top 8'd, which was a God Pharaoh's Gift deck. The card looked phenomenal in that deck because it did everything that deck wanted to do. It helped to populate the graveyard, and also was a nice target for the card, or if you didn't have the artifact out for some reason, you could still eternalize the card. Fantastic, fantastic card. You pay 3, you get yourself a 2/1, you loot twice when it enters the battlefield, and then you kind of want it to die. You'd like to maybe chump block with it, or if it gets hit with a board sweep, you're not super sad about that, because later on you eternalize it, or in some cases use God Pharaoh's Gift, bring it back as a 4/4, draw 4 cards and discard 2. The card is just insane, right? It's going to go up, and it's going to go up quick, especially once the Pro Tour coverage hits. This card will be seen, it will be spotlighted, it will go up, and I have no doubt this is going to be a key card in Standard going forward for quite some time. Really, really awesome card, and I think the power level is even there for Modern and other formats too, perhaps. Again, it works well in Commander too. It can also work as a casual card, but phenomenal pickup. If you can find these things for $3 to $4 this week, I'd think about grabbing yourself a playset just so you're in for the long haul. Having said that, those are the cards for today. So this weekend we'll do our regular Market Watch episode where we look at all things Standard, Modern, Commander, and Legacy. And on top of that, we'll be opening a lot of product this week. All our Hour of Devastation booster box openings, and we'll be looking at some pre-release kits, doing some sealed deck techs with them. So a lot of good stuff coming up. And then, of course, once we get past the Pro Tour, we will do another spotlight looking at these Standard singles to see what kind of impact the Pro Tour had. And I'm sure it will be relatively significant. It always is. So until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.